Welcome back into another episode of Royal Radio. My name is Bo Burgess, and I am here with two very special guests today. One is always Coach Jeff Conaway, our athletic director and head football coach, and Coach Jacob Gill, who is our associate athletic director and our defensive coordinator. Coach, thank you for being here. Appreciate you coming on. Just really pumped to have you here.
Well, I appreciate it. Thanks for the opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. If you want to get started, just walk us through who you are, kind of your background, how you got into coaching. I know you love baseball originally, and now you've shifted to loving football more. Talk to us a little bit more just kind of about your story.
Yeah, so I grew up in a single-parent home, and the two things that my mom knew would simultaneously keep me out of trouble, but also give me some positive male influences were church and sports. And that's where we were most of the time. If we weren't at home, we were at church, or we were playing some kind of a sport. And so I fell in love with athletics and competition from a really early age. I was fortunate to be somewhat athletic. I think as I get older, I think I was more athletic than I was, which I think is normal. But had the opportunity to play football, basketball, baseball while I was in high school. I started in football, long story short, got hurt my sophomore year in football, wasn't able to play, but was able to play baseball. And through that, some opportunities arose for me to be able to go play in college and play baseball, but always kind of felt like I had a little bit of unfinished business on the football side. And so always loved football and just happened to be playing baseball, but knew from really an early age, probably sometime middle of high school into early college, that I wanted to coach football. And in particular, I wanted to coach football in the South, where it matters and it's a big deal. And so I've been blessed to be able to do that at a couple of different schools in Arkansas and Tennessee and now in Florida. And so athletics has always been a big part of my life. My coaches, I was fortunate to have some really, really good coaches, and they poured into me. They definitely filled some of those father figure roles in my life as a young man, and I knew, based on the impact those guys had on me, that that's something that I felt like the Lord was calling me into and I wanted to do. And so, again, I've been very, very fortunate to have the opportunity to do that at some really good places.
And how did you get hooked up with Coach Conaway? Because this is round 2 for you guys, right? Of head coach DC connection. How did this partnership come to be?
That's a great story. I was at a different school in Northwest Arkansas.
Wait, are we going to let him tell this story? I feel like
we'll let him
tell
his side, then we'll let you chip in. Ask him the question. He's the guest.
Yeah, I'll tell the story, and you can correct anything I get wrong. So I was at a different school in Northwest Arkansas. Coach Conaway had gotten the Shiloh job, and historically our two schools had always played their preseason game, kickoff classic, against each other. And so I think there was a little bit of just familiarity. I kind of knew who he was. I think he kind of knew who I was just from those times. I think we did some team camps. Shiloh always hosted a 7-on-7 that we always went and played in. And so I was coaching there, and then our oldest son was getting to the age where he needed to be in preschool, pre-kindergarten, something. And as a public school teacher, my wife was also a public school teacher, Shiloh offered a public school teacher discount. And so as we were kind of looking around the area of, hey, what's the best option for our son? Well, when we got that discount, Shiloh was at the same price point as some of the other schools we really liked. And my wife grew up. She went to private Christian education, kindergarten through 10th grade. And that was something that was really important to us, and said, man, if we can get our kid in that school and it's going to be the same price point for us, what a great opportunity for us. So our oldest son got enrolled at Shiloh, and so because of that, with all the things you get as a preschool parent and all the opportunities you get to be on campus, I got to be on Shiloh's campus a handful of times and really kind of see behind the curtain, if you will, what that looked like. And I made a remark to my wife at some kind of preschool performance or something. Like, man, if there was ever an opportunity to work here, like I think I'd really like this. Yeah. And kind of just said it and kept
put it
moving.
out in the world and then kept moving.
Yeah. And so spring break of 2016, we were up in Kansas City visiting my in-laws, and I had seen a post on Twitter from a guy that I had known that was on Jeff's staff. He was the OC at that point in time, and Jeff had a defensive coordinator who had just left to take a head coaching job back in Oklahoma, a really good opportunity for him. And Jeff had kind of sent out, once it all went final, like a congratulations, appreciate your investment, all those type of deals. So I reached out to my buddy, the only guy I really knew at Shiloh, and I just asked him, I said, man, is this job open? Like, is it open, or is this like...
It's open, but we got a guy.
It's open, but it's already done kind of deal. And he said, man, I know he's talked to some guys, but no one's been hired yet. And so I was like, man, can I get his number? Something. Like, I just want to make contact. And so we exchanged phone numbers. I think we texted back and forth a little bit. I said, hey, we're driving home tomorrow. Let me get my kids asleep in the truck, and I can have all the time in the world to talk. Yeah. And so we talked for probably, I don't know, an hour or so. Obviously, coming from the public school side into the private school side, there's obviously some expectations there of, hey, we are a little bit different.
Yeah, very different.
And so we need to make sure you're aligned with our mission and our values and kind of that pre-screening conversation, if you will. So we did that. This is probably where our stories go separate ways.
This is the T in the road.
Yeah, this is where we're going to dovetail maybe. And so I knew, based on the timing, post-spring break, you're probably 6 weeks out from spring football, and I'm just doing the math on the calendar and going, man, someone's going to get hired to do this job pretty soon.
Very soon.
And so I think we kind of missed each other a couple times, and eventually our schools were so close to each other. So I'm gonna say, hey, I'm just gonna drop by. Like, I'll just, when are you guys done with workouts in the afternoon? I'll just swing through. I'll just pop on in.
Well, and I think it is important at this time to interject and say, at Shiloh, because of the tradition that we had, me being the athletic director, we had short lists for every coach.
Yeah.
And at that time, I had already begun interviewing some really good candidates. We had an athletic director that wanted to come and potentially take that position. And so I guess my expectation was I was replacing a defensive coordinator who I got after he was a head coach in Oklahoma. And in my mind, I'm thinking, man, I got an opportunity to go get another head coach or an AD, and
somebody with a ton of experience,
someone with a lot of experience
can really help.
Yeah,
which I was none of those things.
Sure. What were you doing at Springdale?
I was a special teams coordinator,
okay,
and then I coached safeties. I had been a defensive coordinator at a previous job.
Gotcha.
And took the Springdale job, and so we finally get in a room and just kind of start talking and just overall philosophy. We talked about our families. We talked about his plan at Shiloh, where he thought the program could get back to. Again, a very storied program in Arkansas high school football. And I grew up just down the road, so I knew.
Yeah.
And I had buddies who played there. And so from the missional side of what the school stood for, obviously my personal beliefs and my faith, being able to walk that out daily, and then being at a place with such a great tradition with some great opportunity in front of them, it was very appealing to me, and a job that I really, really wanted. And sometimes in the coaching world, you get things in passing and maybe someone does a temperature check on you or whatever, and it's not the right fit or whatever, and there's probably just a handful that you're like, I'm going for that.
Done.
Like I'm all in on that job. And so we talked and visited. I think our conversation went from just a quick afternoon meeting to we were in there for a while, to the point where like my wife is texting me going, where are you?
Are you good?
Yeah, is everything okay? What are you doing right now?
Yeah.
That kind of deal. And so I think through that meeting, and we got down deep into some football talk too. I think after that meeting, I made a good enough impression to at least, if I wasn't on the short list, get on the short list, type of deal. And so I think that meeting, where we really just our true first time really visiting and talking with each other, was, and I don't say this to be dramatic, but like that was life changing for me.
Yeah.
Like that meeting changed my life, and put me in a position that if I wouldn't have gotten that meeting, I wouldn't be here.
Yeah.
In our program even now, we talk a lot about those types of decisions can be life-changing. Those types of competition moments in life, it doesn't matter if it's a competition over a girlfriend, a potential wife, competition for a job, competition for a task. It doesn't matter. But when you learn the art of shooting your shot or putting your pride on the line.
Yeah, there's 100 cliches about it.
It's so important, and that's what's so fun about athletics is you get to teach those things. And I'm sure as an athlete, you're put in those positions that are hard, they're difficult, there's a risk for failure, but you're putting yourself out there.
Right.
And he went from being someone that I was trying not to put on our list to someone after that 3-hour meeting that was at the top of our list.
Yeah.
Just because we were like-minded, I saw so much in him that I knew would work well with me, and just his overall knowledge of the game and the way that he communicated. It was very easy to see that he was although he was not necessarily a coordinator or a defensive coordinator, I knew that he would be able to step in and be a really valuable coordinator for us.
Yeah. So we went from that to, I think the next week we had final interviews, and I think I picked to go last. I wanted to be the last guy in the room kind of deal. And so I think I interviewed on Wednesday with Coach Conaway and the leadership team there. And then they obviously did their due diligence and talked, and Coach Conaway, I believe, called me on a Friday and offered a position, and told him, the classic, like, well, hey, let me talk to my wife.
Yeah, give me the weekend to pray about it.
Let me pray it over, and I think I accepted like 4 minutes later. Yeah. So, but it was one of those deals that the more I had conversed with Jeff and the more I had talked to some guys who knew about the program, the more that my wife and I talked about what this could mean for us and our kids and the opportunity. Again, as Coach said, there's a handful of moments in life where it's like, the only way I'm going to get this done is if I'm all in.
Right.
Like I got to go.
You got to go for it.
Yeah, and so that was one of those moments where it's like, I'm doing I'm texting every coach I've ever worked with, like, I need a reference.
Yeah.
Like, can you call for me? Can, like, every principal that I've ever worked for, like, I need a reference. Like, I need to make sure. And so I went and talked to the head coach that I was working for, who I'm still very, very good friends with, and told him, like, hey, I've got this opportunity, and if I get offered, I'm going to take it.
Yeah.
And he was so supportive and knew where I wanted to go in my career, and just the encouragement he gave me of like, man, that is such a good job for you. Like you'll do great there. Like just that blessing to be able to go. And so we accepted the job on April 19th of 2016. We were on a little weekend getaway when that happened, and so the weekend getaway turned into a weekend of work for me, because like I'm telling my wife, like, hey, like we're taking this job and spring football starts in like 3 weeks, so
Get up to speed.
I got stuff I got to get done now, and so
maybe like one celebration dinner and then we're full go.
Exactly, and so we were able to do that, and then got in the spring. Went through spring ball, and then obviously got into our summer stuff. And I mean, once that happened, man, we hit the ground running. And again, got to be there for 6 seasons. Got to, we played in multiple state championship games, got to win a state championship, provided some future opportunities for me. And those are all awesome. Like you have the sweet football memories and stuff like that. But when I look back, when I say life-changing for me, the spiritual formation that I got to go through from just being part of our school culture, but being part of our football staff, Coach Conaway's intentionality of pouring into our staff and prioritizing that as a staff, the church that we were in, again, it completely altered the trajectory, not just of my career, yes it did, but also just my life. And I would tell anybody I'm a better husband, I'm a better father, I'm a better coach for the time that I got to spend at Shiloh, and that wouldn't have happened without Coach Conaway.
There's like 100 directions I want to go off of this story.
Take them all. Which way you want to go?
I'm going to start with, okay, so you said April 19th, 2016. So it's August 19th, 2024, and you're sitting in an office in Orlando, Florida, with Coach Conaway at a completely different school.
Yeah.
How do we get here? How are we here? And tag onto that, what are the kind of some of the similarities between Shiloh and TFA that you've seen just in the 3 or 4 months you've been here?
Yeah, and so I had an opportunity to go be a head coach. It was a good opportunity for me. And right after I had accepted that job, Coach Conaway had accepted this job. And obviously, he's the head coach. I'm the defense coordinator. We have a good working relationship, but like we're really close.
You're friends, yeah.
Like off the field. And our kids are similar ages. Our kids are friends. Our wives are friends. And so it's not like we fell out of contact, right?
Yeah.
And so we were both entering a season of something brand new. And obviously we stayed in contact and all those things. And then this spring sometime there was an opportunity to come down here. And, I love working with Coach Conaway. And I love the way he runs his program, and being a part of that was something that was very enticing to me and to my family. And so when you look at Shiloh and TFA, obviously one's in Arkansas, one's in Florida. There's natural differences that happen there.
Yeah, for sure.
But what I think helped draw me here, other than getting to work with Coach Conaway again, was the schools are very, very similar in regards to, hey, it's K through 12. It is decidedly a Christian school, distinctively a Christian school. The opportunity to have my children in that environment again was very important to me and my wife. And then there's kind of this coaching cliche, if you will, that, great administrations make great athletic programs.
Yeah.
And hearing from Coach Conaway about Dr. Whitaker and Brian Rose and Will Cohen and the support staff here and all the people who are so willing to help us and who are invested in the whole student. Academically, absolutely. Shiloh's got a great academic reputation. So does TFA. Spiritual formation and development, Shiloh does that very well. So does TFA. And then athletic development. How do we develop the full student athlete, not just on the field or in a weight room or on a court, but how do we develop them in the classroom? What role does athletics play in developing this kid socially? How do we prepare them for life in general, not just as a competitor, but what happens when we step off the field? How do we prepare them for that? How do we use our platform of athletics to point back to Christ and say, hey, yeah, this is how we develop spiritually through athletics.
Right.
And being in a place where we have the opportunity to not just pour into student athletes from a competitive standpoint, but really to partner with families as their young child, male or female, is growing and maturing in the classroom with their friends in the social world, in their spiritual life. Those are all things I'm super passionate about. I don't think I realized how much I valued that until I got to Shiloh.
Yeah. Until you had it.
Until I had it. And so I think retrospectively, I look back at the coaches who poured into me. I didn't even realize it at the time, that those one-on-one conversations, that conversation on the field after practice or whatever, my coaches were challenging me academically if I needed it, socially if I needed it,
right,
spiritually if I needed it, and obviously athletically. So I look back and go, man, I didn't even realize it.
But all those things
but
were happening.
all those things were happening to me and for me.
Right.
And now I get a chance to do it outright. Like it's encouraged.
Right. It's literally like our whole mission.
That's
and vision.
what we're doing here,
yeah.
right? Like, so yeah, we want to, yes, every team wants to win the last game of the season. Every team wants to do that. And we've been fortunate to be able to do that before. But what I look at is, man, what an opportunity to pour into student athletes. And yeah, we want them to be successful in their competitive endeavors. But man, who is that? I coach football, so who's that young man turn into when he's 28, not just 18, but who is he when he's 38?
Yeah.
Is he going to be a better husband? Is he going to be a better father? Is he going to be a better disciple maker because of the time he spent in our program? And I think that's the hallmark, and that's the check on, man, is that football program really doing what they say they're going to do? Is, man, who are these guys 20 years after they get out of our program?
Right.
And can a guy look back and go, man, I'll tell you what, we won some games, we may have lost some games, but I'm better for having been in that program. And I know that's the vision that our administration has here. I know that's the vision that Coach Conaway has. I know that's the vision that I want to be a part of. And so when I got the opportunity to come do it again, it was a no-brainer for us.
Yeah, it seems like there's a lot of, and talking to you and Coach and some other folks about Shiloh, and it seems like a very similar atmosphere in terms of,
Sure.
hey, this is the goal. We're going to make Christ followers. We're going to do it through athletics, fine arts, academics. It all kind of seems on the same page.
Yeah, and I think being able to work in an environment like that, you referred to just your growth. And I think when you're in an environment like TFA, where the expectation is we are a ministry of First Orlando, and we are truly accepting a calling. And that's special. It's special as a coach, but it's also special as a dad. And what we've experienced, what Coach Gill and I have experienced over the last several years is, I started thinking about what would be the most memorable moment or funniest story, and I could definitely share some of those. But I think
we'll get to that.
Yeah, I think the most memorable was the experience when a group of coaches, and not just football coaches, but when a group of coaches get together and open the Word together and truly attempt to grow spiritually and truly attempt to be self-feeders and love and encourage our wives and our kids and our players and try to get others to grow in their relationship with Jesus, it really is special. And so, just that experience, he talked about how it was life-changing, and I would echo that myself.
Yeah. We have to just take 10 minutes and talk about stories because you two have known each other a long time.
Sure.
What is the best Coach Gill story from your side, and then what is the best Coach Conaway story from your side? Whoever you can pick.
I'll let you go
Coach
first.
Gill's a great storyteller just because he exaggerates. The story is kind of like
greatest storytellers always do.
Yeah, but I think one of the funniest is when he got to Shiloh that spring. We had started spring football practice, and there was a practice. I want to say it was his first one.
It was. I know what story you're going to tell. It was the first practice.
His first practice, because every day at Shiloh, and just like every day at TFA, it's a great day to practice. And we didn't talk about the weather. I'm learning to talk about the weather.
You got to.
It's a little different.
It's a little
here.
different.
But if it was raining, we were practicing.
Yeah,
At that time, we didn't have our indoor, and I was as ornery and as hard-headed. I wanted our players to have a toughness about them that you don't go outside and complain if it's cold. You don't complain if it's the H word. You don't complain if it's raining. We just practiced.
Yeah.
That first day that he was on the Shiloh campus as our defensive coordinator, it poured for hours. And all of us had been there, so we had our rain gear. He didn't have any rain gear yet. So he's out there. He's out there for 2 hours, and it was just nonstop. And just to see him under the goalpost like a little wet puppy, it was one of the highlights of the year.
Right. And to add to the glory and majesty of that day, that was my first ever Shiloh speed practice.
Yeah, it's a different type of practice.
It's a different
for sure.
tempo.
Yeah,
it's a different tempo. So there I am, just soaked head to toe, just
owning it.
Looked like I just got out of the ocean, And on top of that, we are practicing at a pace that I had never been a part of. Like I've ran 2-minute drill and all those things, but it is nonstop, start to finish. And so I've got my script, it's wet, I
Yeah,
can
I
barely
can't read
read
it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like the paper's just crumbling or whatever. And on top of that, we're going so like I can remember like the first like Pascal session we did where we're playing like 7-on-7. I can't get a call in fast enough to get the defense lined up. And so I'm behind on the call sheet. So now I'm frustrated. I'm wet and I'm cold, more frustration. And I can't breathe. Because like I'm running around and like our defensive line coach was coaching baseball, our corners coach was coaching baseball.
Sure.
So there's like we're short staffed.
Hey, you couldn't have thrown him a bone, given him some help.
I'm trying to coach all 11 players at one time, and I'm just exhausted, like just absolutely exhausted. And I can remember walking in with Adam, the offensive coordinator, after the practice. And he's like, "Hey, man, how was it? What'd you think?" And I'll never forget, I just looked at him. I was like, "Do we do that every day?" like every day? And he said, "Yeah, man, every day." And so I had to do two things. One, I had to get some rain gear.
Yeah.
That was a priority. And so I think I bugged Coach Conaway about rain gear for like months. But what it forced me to do was I had to take inventory of, okay, well, how do we communicate calls? How can we streamline verbiage and those type of deals so that we're more efficient in practice? And from a technical standpoint, one thing a lot of tempo offenses can do to defenses is, hey, if we're in the middle of chaos, well, we'll just play base. We'll just
get a call in.
We'll
We're
just
going
be
to stick in base.
super vanilla.
Yeah.
Well, good offensive coaches, if they know what your base is, they know how to attack based on what your rules are. And so if I can get you disorganized to the point where all you can do is hit reset, well, the advantage tips to the offense. Because if they know where all the chess pieces are going to be lined up, they can get what they want out of it. And so what it inadvertently forced me to do as a coordinator was go, okay, if we can line up and practice efficiently against our team, who's going to probably play with more pace than anyone we play, we can line up and play against anybody as far as organizationally.
Right.
And so it was really good development for me because I had to address some things within the system and go, okay, well, we got to shorten that call. We got to shorten that. And I learned from studying our offense, I can get a 9-word call in if I want to. But if someone's snapping the ball every 12 seconds, that's not going to do us any good, even though it may be a great call.
Yeah, perfect call, but you can't get it in communicated.
And so how do we take whatever those calls may be where we're maybe in a different front, we've got a different movement up front, and we're going to pressure and add a coverage call. Like, how do we one-word those? And I learned from our offense, man, like, we have these one-word tempo calls. And, like, this is what this name means, all of these words at one time.
Right.
And so now, from being in that system and seeing our offense operate, we've got some similar calls in where if we were to call the whole thing out, it would be a really wordy call.
Right.
So how do we condense that? How do we put certain types of calls in certain families so that when we say this call, whatever that is, our kids know, like, oh, that call is in this family, it means this.
Right.
And we go out and line up. And so that way, if we are getting tempoed, we can still get into the stuff we want to get into and communicate more effectively. And so again, it was a miserable experience for me that first day. It was not a fun first day, but it was a catalyst for growth too. And it really did push me to evaluate and get better.
And see, I know Coach enough to know that he probably beforehand was in the offensive meeting room and was like, all right, we're going to see what this guy, we're going to throw everything we got at
He
this
said,
guy.
we're going to run him ragged.
First day of spring, we're going to really, he has no other coaches. Like, we're going to really throw it at
This
him.
big shot wants to be a DC. Let's find out.
Let's see how bad he wants it.
Yeah, that's fair.
That's incredible.
No, actually, never crossed my mind.
Wink, wink.
Yeah.
My turn. Favorite Coach Conaway story. Man, there's a lot. I could go, like you said a minute ago, I could go 100 different directions. I'll tell two. Football story. Favorite football story. Again, my first year or second year, we're in the playoffs, and there was always the kind of the back and forth between the offensive play caller, defensive play caller, like, hey, how many points are we going to give up this week? And I'm asking, well, how many points are we going to score this week? That type of deal.
There's some calculations happening there to know.
How good do you think they're going to be? How good do I think they're going to be? That type of deal. And so I think we were playing a team, and I felt fairly confident, like, man, if we go out and do what we're supposed to do, like I don't think we're going to give up more than 28. Like, they're good. They can score. They're in the quarterfinals just like we are. They're a good football team.
Playoff football.
But I feel like we've got good players, good idea what we're trying to do, what we're trying to execute. Like, all right, sweet. So we had a kid who played receiver for us. It was very good. And at one point in time, I think the game is tied. I think it's like 14-14 second quarter. And we throw him a fade, and it's incomplete, out of bounds. All right. Second down. We throw him a fade. It's incomplete. It's like, oh, okay. So I'm like on the headset, okay, hey, punt alert, defense get ready, 3rd and 10, whatever. We throw him a fade the third time. Incomplete. And I'm like, oh, well, okay.
3 straight fades. Okay, cool, yeah.
All right, cool. So we're going to punt, whatever. And so I'm expecting, because we're like on the minus 35 or something, so I'm expecting like flip the field, change of possession, all this stuff. So I'm down like on the opposite 30.
Yeah.
Getting ready to send the defense out. And Coach Conaway comes on the headset and he goes, hey, just so you know, we're going for this. And I said,
excuse me?
What do you, right now? Like, we're going to, on 4, okay. And so we were fortunate. We had our punter was a quarterback, a very athletic kid. And so we had this kind of like rugby style punt. And so there was always this built in, like, hey, this receiver that we had just thrown 3 fades to, he's also the gunner on the outside. So it's like, hey, if we like it,
throw it.
Take it. And I'm telling you, like, it happened in slow motion. We snap it, our kid rolls, our kid runs a fade, and our punter / quarterback stands up and he throws a perfect ball to this kid, and he catches it probably 5 yards in front of me. And we convert, and so we get it, we go score. We go on to win that game. And we were just talking in the office after the game, like what was that? Like, it's 14-14. Like, it's right before half. Like, they just scored on their last drive. Like you said, it's minus 35. If we don't get it, they're in great field position. And he was like, well, you said you were going to hold them to 28 or less, right? It's like, well, yeah, but not like that. Like, that's not the way I saw that whole, like, I'm thinking more flip the field, try to pin them deep, let's get a stop, that type of deal. But it was just again, it was reinforcing, like, we're going to be aggressive. We're going to, and after I kind of got over the moment, what it was on a deeper level was a reassurance that Coach Conaway had faith in us. And Coach Conaway trusted not just me, but our defensive staff, our defensive plan, and our defensive players that, hey, it would be really advantageous for us to convert right here and go score. But even if we don't, we've got confidence that our defense can get us the ball back. And so as a defensive coordinator, you want the offense to believe in you. You want the offense to be able to have the confidence to be aggressive because they know, hey, we may not get it every time, but we're a complete team. And so if we don't get it, we have trust and faith that the defense will step up and get a stop. Now, as a coordinator, you'd like that to be on like their minus 10.
You want to be great.
Like, I'd love to defend people down there. But again, it was a reinforcement of like, hey man, this is how we play.
Yeah.
This is our brand of football. This is what we do. If we feel like we have an advantage, we're going to take it. And that was also reassuring for me as a guy. I think that was my second year in of like, man, we can be aggressive. And like that, like the way that got flipped was like defensively, like we can take some shots because we've got faith our offense is going to score. That doesn't mean we want to be unsound and just.
It's an excuse.
Right. But it gave us the confidence to go, man, hey, if we feel like we have something that's going to be good, let's call it. Yeah. Let's not be afraid to go call it. And hopefully we've coached it well enough to where it does work out. But even if it doesn't, like our offense can go get 7 points.
Yeah.
And so that, I think, was a really cool moment because it gave me some confidence that the head guy believed in what we were doing, but also the confidence of like, man, we can go cut it loose if we want to, and we can be aggressive on defense just like we're aggressive on offense. And when your kids buy into that, and the kids believe in like, hey, we're going to be okay if we don't convert, but we're going to try to go convert, and vice versa, the defense goes, hey, it's okay if the offense doesn't score every time because we're going to give them the ball right back.
Right.
Like that was really that was a cool moment.
Yeah.
And when we went for a lot of fourth downs, and we got a lot of them, but that was a cool story. I think a non-football story. Coach talked about our time together as a staff where we were really intentional about digging into the Word, and in the process of that, a lot like TFA, not every kid at Shiloh is a believer. You know, it's not a covenant school or anything like that, and so we knew, just based on odds, there's kids in the school and there's kids on our team who don't know the Lord.
Yeah.
And so through that, we were doing one of our Thursday coaches meetings, and we'd been doing it for about a year. And a year prior, we were having the conversation of like, hey, who do we think, not in a judgmental way, but like, who do we really need to pray for on our team? Yeah. Like, who are those guys that, man, we need to get the gospel message to them over and over and over again? And there were a few. There's one kid in particular that we had been praying for him and praying for him, and we had been in that meeting, and Coach kind of said like, hey, we need to pray for some of our guys. Like, who do we need to pray for? And so in United, as each position coach may know a little bit more, you know, there may be someone who's got a closer relationship, like, hey, this kid's really struggling, or X, Y, Z. Well, we mentioned this kid by name. And so we're talking about him, and we all kind of knew his situation in life, and so we're talking about him. And I'm not kidding, just true like Holy Spirit moment. We're sitting in this like athletics conference room, and there is a knock on the door, and we're like, everybody kind of knew that's when we were having our meetings. That's where we had our meetings, and we kind of had that space to ourselves. Like, who's that? Who's knocking on the door? So we go open the door, and it's this kid. Like, we had just been talking about, man, we need to pray for this kid.
I think we had just prayed for him as a group.
And like, he's standing at the door, and we're like, hey, man, like, what are you doing?
What's going on?
What are you doing here? And his answer, like, it hit me like a ton of bricks. He goes, I don't know. And so we all kind of do that like side eye look, like, hey, why don't you come in here real quick, you know, whatever.
Bring it in here.
And so we were able to pray with that kid and begin walking down the steps of that gospel message with him, and just the intentionality. And I think sometimes as a coach, you get defensive a little bit about your profession because you're judged on wins and losses. And a lot of the times you're judged by how is my individual child's experience in those wins and losses going. And that directly impacts what people think you're doing and how well they think you're doing your job. And that's fair. That's part of the coaching world. But I think when you have leadership that's that intentional about all the things we just talked about a few minutes ago about, man, we want to pour into these kids and develop them well beyond just their football skill sets. Having those opportunities as a staff to sit down and like be real, be authentic. And in those meetings, I need you to pray for my family.
Yeah.
Like here's what my family's going through right now. Hey, I need you to pray for this. Like, I need support, guys. I need, the accountability, whatever it is. But having that, again, decisive, distinct, like, we're going to do this. Like, this is our mission field. We are called to do more than just coach football. And then seeing the fruition of that relationship building with that kid over a year, and again, we're praying for this kid over the course of an entire year.
Yeah, it wasn't just like happened to be that day.
Correct.
Like, it's been a long process.
Yeah, and so then you can go levels deeper there, like, man, how God's timing and how the Holy Spirit moves, and just those God moments in life. And then what I liked, looking back at that moment, is we could have very easily just said, "Hey, man, we just prayed for you. Have a great day."
Yeah.
And could have gone about our business.
Yeah.
And that wouldn't have been wrong. But to press pause, and that was Coach, press pause and go, hey, come here, can we pray for you? Like, can we lay hands and pray? Can we just pray for you right now? Like, just that intentionality. And just, I think, as an assistant coach, as a guy who's been a head coach, seeing all the things that go on other than what just happens on a field on a Friday night, and how much coaches are willing to invest in their profession, but in the lives of the kids they're coaching, and then being able to be in a program that emphasizes, and I would almost say demands, that we have that type of intentionality. So you talk about, well, what got you back to TFA? Well, being in that environment.
Yeah.
You know, I want to be in an environment that's highly competitive, and if you look at our schedule, it's highly competitive. But I also want to be in an environment where I can come into the head coach's office and say, man, can you pray for me? I'm just struggling with whatever it is. Or can you pray for my wife? Or can you pray for my kids? Or, hey, I just got done talking to this player, and like we need to rally around this kid and support him, whatever it is. Like, that's the kind of environment I want to coach in. And I've been fortunate. I've had a lot of good jobs, but not every environment's like that. And so to be in a private Christian school, to be working with a head coach who very much values that approach and says, we're going to coach ball now, and we're going to go play. But man, that's not the only thing we're doing here. And if we're getting really down to the bare bones of it, that's not the most important thing we're doing here. The most important thing we're doing here is pouring into kids spiritually, because we are disciples who are called to be discipled and go make disciples. And that's what we're doing. And fortunately for us, we get to do it in the beautiful state of Florida on the wonderful campus of TFA in an awesome environment with a great football opportunity, but even bigger than that, a great spiritual opportunity to really invest in our student athletes and help try to make disciples along the way.
Coach Gill, we would be wrong if we didn't allow you to talk about your family. Tell us a little bit about Kayla and Colson, Keegan, Cannon, and maybe some things that they are excited also about being here.
Yeah. My wife, Kayla, we've been married. We celebrated 16 years of marriage this past June. She's originally from Kansas City. I went up to school and played baseball in Kansas, and so we met while we were there. Got married, lived in Kansas for 2 years. Got an opportunity to come back to Northwest Arkansas and coach at my alma mater. Our oldest son, Colson, is 13. He's in 7th grade here at TFA. Our middle son, Keegan, is 10. He's in 5th grade here at TFA. And then our youngest son, Cannon, is in 1st grade. I was going to say he's 1. That's not true. He's 7, but he's in 1st grade here at TFA. And so through the process of coming to TFA, I think in the coaching world, one of the things you have to go through as a family is you understand, like, it is a mobile profession, and most people don't go somewhere and stay there for 35 years and retire. Like, you're at some point in time.
Those are the outcasts.
Yeah. Sometime people are probably going to move.
Yeah.
Like, that's just the way the coaching world goes. So whenever we've been in those situations with our kids, we've always tried to be really honest and involve them in as much of that decision-making process that's appropriate. And so we had some opportunities at some different places, and had some conversations with some different places, and had this opportunity. And so I did my very, very best to not ask my youngest son what he thought, because him and Jones, Coach Conaway's,
he knows that Jones is here,
youngest son, Jones was born at the beginning of football season. Cannon was born at the end of football season. Kayla and Melissa were pregnant at the same time, and they've done life together basically their entire lives.
Yeah.
And so they are tight. They're tight. My middle son, Keegan, Coach Conaway's middle daughter, Ayla, same grade. I think they had the same teacher a couple times at Shiloh, like their friend. And so I knew if I just boiled it down to, hey, do you want to go to school with Jones, or do you want to go somewhere where Jones is not? Like, that's an easy answer for Cannon.
Yeah.
He's 100% in.
He's in.
You know? And so we tried to talk through
everything else,
bigger picture, and just, the wisdom of children. We're kind of comparing these opportunities, and we're talking about what we perceive to be the pluses and what maybe might not be, all those things. So we're having this family conversation, and Cannon goes, which school is Jones at? I was like, well, he's at the school in Florida. He goes, we need to go to Florida. And so it's like, in this whole transition thing, like Coach Conaway is talking to me and like, hey, it's a big move and you're moving far away. And like, how's the family feel? I was like, they're more confident than me. Like they are sold. I told them it's going to be in Florida and there's Disney World and there's Universal Studios and your friends that you already know are there and it's warm. And all they're like, we're in.
Done.
Let's go.
Yeah.
And so I was like, okay, well, that maybe didn't go the way I thought it was going to go. But I think beyond just that initial phase, again, my wife went to private Christian school. My wife was a missions major in college. And so she very much views education as a mission field just like I do. And so this will be her first opportunity to work in a Christian school environment. So that's something she's very, very excited about. And then my kids loved the Shiloh experience. And so when we came down here and we did our tour as a family, not as a prospective employee, but as a prospective family, and got to meet with our admissions team and got to go see the campus and got to hear the hearts of the administration and the teachers and the admissions people and all those things. I think my family's really excited about this. Isn't necessarily Northwest Arkansas, which is where our lives as a family started, but man, this sure does feel like home.
Yeah.
Like this is the kind of place we want to be in, with the kind of people we want to be with, doing the things we want to do. And so when you add in everything that TFA as a school offers, and then you add in, and I'm saying that as a parent, from a parental standpoint, man, what a great opportunity to have your kids at a place like TFA as a parent. And then you add in, oh yeah, by the way, it's in Orlando, Florida.
Even bigger one.
I mean, it's like, there's so many positives and there's so many things that you can look forward to from the TFA side, and even seeing, again, as a new family, man, just the intentionality of the admissions team and trying to give us as many ways to get in and get acclimated, get plugged in, seeing the intentionality just from the first week of school of every one of my kids' teachers reaching out, checking in. Man, it's just such a community feel. And I think as believers, we're supposed to be in community. We're supposed to do life together. And so when I can get up and love going to work and love going to the place that I get to spend a lot of my day at, and my wife's there, and I get to see my kids, and my kids love it, and my wife loves what she's doing. When we started evaluating those things and looking, going, man, this is a great opportunity for us. And so we jumped in and said, hey, we're all in, we're all about it. And it's been fast, as relocating is, but it's been just such a great experience for us so far. And man, we're looking forward to many, many years to come.
Yeah, and I think that was something that I, as a student here for 12 years, never understood until I left and didn't have it anymore.
Sure.
And coming back to TFA for my senior year, I was like, oh man, this place is different, not just because it's what I'm familiar with, but it's intentional. And I feel like we've said this word on every podcast so far, the word intentional, but that's kind of like the main theme of TFA that I've seen, other than the spiritual side, is just the intentionality behind everyone. So my last question before we're going to get to some rapid fire ones, I want to know, what was the number one thing you learned from your year as a head coach? You spent the last year at Brentwood Academy up in Nashville.
Yeah.
What was the number one takeaway, good or bad, that you learned from going from DC coordinator to head coach, that now back as a DC you've kind of applied and used?
Yeah, I think there's probably two. I think number one is, I think my experience as a head coach is going to help me be a better coordinator. I think there's things as a coordinator who had never been in the head coach's chair before, you just don't know, you don't get to experience, you're ignorant about it. And there's another coaching cliche of like, when you're the head coach, there's going to be 5 things a day that happen that you were not planning on happening, that your job requires, you're the point person for that. And so I think walking through that and seeing like, I get it. Maybe there were some things that happened that not necessarily I didn't agree with, but like, you just don't understand it until you're there.
Yeah.
And so I think having walked through that, I can now kind of take a step back and go, man, what kind of coordinator would I have wanted to work for me? How can I now, knowing what I know from that experience, how can I do this job even better than I did it before? And I think that knowledge of understanding what the head coach is going through and the things that are on the head coach's shoulders that really have nothing to do with X's and O's and have nothing to do with football, I think that helps you serve better as an assistant. And so I think that's a great lesson that I learned of like, man, having been there before, I think now my eyes are open in a little different way of like, man, this is how I can, I need to coordinate the defense. I need to make sure we're sound. I need to coach our guys and coach our coaches. But this is the way I can actually really serve at a deeper level for our program and really serve at a deeper level for the head coach. So that's one. The second one, again, people say it all the time, but man, leadership's lonely now. And when you get elevated on a platform, you have more responsibility and you have more accountability, but you also have less relational depth with as many people. And so the head coach can't be all things to all people at all times. It's impossible. And I think one thing I probably struggled with is I think I tried to do that a little bit, where I tried to just get spread to so many things and try to be involved, which is a good thing. But one thing I learned was the art of delegating. And I think sometimes, again, until you're in that spot, you maybe think like, oh, I'm good at that. Like I can delegate that. Yeah, I'm good. And then you get in the thick of it, and it's like, you look down at your phone or at your computer, and it's like 3 o'clock, and you're like, where has today gone? Because I was trying to do so many things at one time. And so again, it was formational for me of going, I've got some traits and skills in this area, but they're probably not as sharp as I thought they were. And so for me, how can I develop those areas so that if I'm ever fortunate enough to have a head coaching opportunity at a different place, can I be better at that? But then also stepping into this role, how can I make myself more available for our assistant coaches? How can I make myself more available for our head coach? How can I make myself more available for our school and go, how can I help? Because man, when you're trying to tackle that stuff as the point person and you're the head of the organization and you're not willing to delegate, or you haven't figured out how to do it at a high level, man, you can just get bogged down and it just weighs on you. And it's not that it's bad, it's just a lot.
Yeah.
And it's a lot. And so again, I think having that year of experience, I think I'm more able to empathize with the head coach now, as opposed to just go, well, yeah, that's the head coach's job. That's what the head coach has to do. Like, I get it now on a deeper level of, man, there's a lot of things that are on his plate. Man, how can I help serve and maybe take a couple of those things off his plate? Because when it comes down to 7 o'clock on Friday, you want everyone on staff, especially the head coach, to be in the right space, and if there's things I can do throughout the week, if there's things that I can do throughout spring football to help us going into fall or whatever, how can I be someone that the head coach can delegate to? And then obviously as I grow, if I'm ever in that spot again, how can I continue to learn how to delegate better? So as the coordinator, how can I delegate better to our defensive staff? So that, because there's certain things that weigh on me and that I've got to get done. And so how many of those things are jobs that only I can do? And then how many of those things are things that, man, if I empower and equip other people to do them, it's going to help them grow in their role, but it's also going to help me do my role better. And so I'm in the fortunate spot now where I get to do that with our defensive staff. I get to delegate and be better professionally in that sense, but also I get to help serve Coach Conaway on the football side, but also on the athletics department side in general of, man, how can I help serve and take some weight off of you so you can do your job really well? And I think ultimately that was probably the biggest leadership lesson I learned last year was, man, you've got to be able to serve, but you can't serve everybody. And so how do I position myself to where I'm serving in a healthy way to where my tank's not just empty every week? So that was really critical for my growth. Like everything else, you look back and go, man, if I could do that all over again, I'd do all of these things differently. Yeah. But I'm grateful for that learning opportunity because I do think it's going to make me a better coach, and it's going to make me better in my role here at TFA.
I think there's such a valuable leadership lesson in all of that too, because all of us lead. We define leadership as influencing others, but most of us also report to someone else,
Sure.
and we're helping them lead. And I think what I have seen and experienced, and Coach Gill has always been good at this, but he's even better at it now. I have seen the experience of being a head coach, and I've seen areas where he has really elevated his game to support me. Little things that maybe he doesn't even realize, but just echoing maybe something that I've said. It's very simple. It's very easy. It's very tempting as followers, helping someone else to mingle with the other followers and maybe let the leader say something, hoping that it lands. It's a whole different level when you can hear the leader say something and you repeat it to the other followers and to the players or students or whoever else is on your team. And I think that's the difference with Coach Gill is he doesn't necessarily do that. He finds ways to echo the things that are important. I can remember a day in April probably where we were in a 6:45 a.m. workout, and I gathered the coaches up, and I could sense just a little bit of a lull. I don't know if it was late in the week or something, but I wanted more intensity with our workout. I didn't want our players to simply go through the motions. And I called the coaches up and I said something like, hey guys, I want to stress our tempo, our toughness, and our being a great teammate. And I kind of described what I wanted the goal or the objective to be, the attention that day. And I can remember when we finished the workout, I want to say Coach Gill brought somebody to the table as far as you were my pace setter because your tempo was excellent, and that's what the head coach wanted. Your toughness was this, and you were a great teammate. Echoing the objectives, that's going below the surface in being a leader, and I'm grateful that you do that. You do support me extremely well. And it does. It makes being the leader so much easier. It's not as much of a burden when you've got other coaches around you that I can't be everything to everyone, but I don't have to be.
Yeah.
Because I've got guys like Coach Gill on my staff.
Yeah, and it probably also feels a little bit less like you're talking to just a brick wall, and you're talking to people who are locked in, engaging, listening with their eyes, and putting into practice the things that you've asked of them to do, and then reinforcing that down to the players. That chain of command probably goes a lot better instead of just going from you to players, from you to other coaches to players. I feel like that probably works a little better just in the breakup of a team.
Yeah. When you, in my experience, when you know the heart of the leader and you know the reasoning behind some of it, or some would say the method behind the madness, whatever, it's easier to go do that. I think you could spin it into business or any other thing, man. If you don't trust the leadership that's over you and you don't trust the authority that you're reporting to, it's really hard to be a good follower. I mean, it just is. And so I think, when there's lack of communication or there's whatever it is, man, those things can get toxic even unintentionally. But I think that's, again, just another reason why we were all in to come to TFA was, again, over 6 years. I know Coach Conaway's heart. I do. And I've told people since I've been here, I'm unique in that I'm the newest person here, but I've known Coach Conaway the longest. So that kind of gives me a unique perspective on just this environment and what we're doing. But it's easy for me because I know not only what Coach Conaway is trying to accomplish and why he's trying to accomplish it, but I also know what the product looks like on the back end of it. And so, yeah, there may be some things that we do that are maybe a little unconventional and some things that if you've never worked for Coach Conaway before, you may go, what are we doing? You're scratching your head and going, this guy's crazy. But having seen it, I believe in the process. And I believe in what we're trying to do and why we're trying to do it. And I think any great leader is able to not just communicate the plan, but a great leader is able to empower others to believe in that plan to the point where they're willing to go execute the plan on their own. And I think that's what Coach Conaway's done for me. Is I know what the blueprint is, and I know what the end result is, and he's empowered me to go, hey, you know what we're doing, let's go do it. And as a guy who's in a coordinator role, like that's the kind of guy you want to work for. Is a guy who's clearly communicating the expectation, is clearly communicating why we're doing these things and why these things matter and how you want it done. So those clear lines of communication and leadership of this is the expectation. And then I think Coach Conaway, the consistency of that. I've told him this to his face, so I can say it on a podcast. The best thing about Coach Conaway as a coach is also the worst thing about Coach Conaway as a coach, which is that he is going to push and push and push every day. And if you are not willing to be pushed, he's going to make you uncomfortable. Like he is. He's going to make you uncomfortable. We'll come into his office and he'll go, all right, here's 25 things we need to get done. And you're like, it's 2:00, or whatever. But it's that consistent drive towards excellence. And it's that consistent drive to, man, we owe it to our players. We owe it to our families. We owe it to TFA to do this thing at the highest level we possibly can. Not so it looks good, but so it is good. And I think that is a vision that I love. And yeah, we're all human. We all have those days where it's like, oh man, I'm dragging, And so if you're not ready to be held accountable and ready to be pushed, it can be uncomfortable. But I've said it, I think, twice in this podcast. Being in that environment has made me a better coach. It has made me a better father. It's made me a better husband, not because I'm good at checking things off a list, but because after being in our program, man, chasing excellence, that's what we do. And it doesn't mean we get it right every time. We're not perfect. We're not going to win every game ever for all time. But, man, we sure are going to push towards excellence. And so I think that as a leader is a great quality to have, and as someone who's following a leader, that's the kind of person I want to follow, is someone who's passionate about what they're doing. They're willing to communicate the message. They're investing in the people who are helping them to do their job. And ultimately, my job as a head coach is to make Coach Conaway look good. Like, that's my job. My job is to support Coach Conaway, support our football program, and do anything I can to help us accomplish the mission. And I think it's easy to do that when you trust the person who's leading that mission. And obviously that's been developed over time with our friendship and our coaching relationship. But that is, I think sometimes it gets missed of there. You can always have a great plan. There's a lot of great plans out there. But I think how you execute the plan and the why behind the plan is what separates average programs and good programs and great programs. And so we're fortunate to be here where Coach Conaway's plan and his mission is also the same mission of TFA. And we have the administrative support where, man, we want to be great in the classroom. We want to be great at spiritual formation. And, man, we want to be great when we go compete. And it's okay to want to be great at all of those things. And so we're gonna go and pursue that and chase that every day. And that's exciting for me.
Quote, one of my favorite movies, enough of this ooey gooey show of emotion. Do you remember that? Can you name it? Can you name that movie quote?
No.
Home Alone. Buzz. Okay. We want to put you on the hot seat now.
I love the hot
Everything
seat.
we've done so far has been too easy.
Too easy.
We've been giving you softballs.
Yep.
Yeah, they're
Right.
pretty
Underhand,
easy.
slow pitch.
Those of you that don't know, Coach Gill is a foodie, and he is the director, coordinator, CEO of nutrition as far as the football program, coaching staff.
Definitely the coaching
concerned.
staff. Yeah.
He, I said this weekend. He has never led us wrong when choosing something to eat. He might overorder. We might have too much food, but
no
we're
problem.
never going to go without good food and a lot of it.
Better too much than not enough.
Amen.
You've only been here for a few months, but favorite restaurant locally in Orlando so far?
Oh man, so far. There's a place right in like the Windermere Ocoee area. It's called Rustique, in a new little plaza over there. It's kind of like American bistro style thing. They've got burgers, they've got steaks, they've got pork chops, homemade sides. It's really, really good. Cool environment. But I think my family has been there in the 4 months we've been here. I think we've been there like 9 times or something like that. So I went in the first time, had a great experience, and I told our server, I said, we will be back.
You'll be seeing us.
Yeah, and she kind of like smiled, like, oh, okay, great. I was like, no, I'm serious. Like, we live 5 minutes from here. We will be back often.
And
so
now she knows you.
Yeah, so like now, like I've got some friends, and like they're like, oh, so it's kind of cool to have like your spot, kind of be a pseudo regular somewhere, and so it's great food, great atmosphere, great staff. Highly, highly, highly recommend.
I was excited to have you on our podcast because you are such a connoisseur of podcasts.
Yes.
So now I must ask you, what is your favorite podcast? You can only pick one.
Oh man,
You've been sneaking in. I've been saying one all day. You've been sneaking in like 2 or 3.
Yep. And
so you got to pick one.
He's got a defensive film meeting soon, so he's going to have to really.
Golly.
We're smoking Coach T's longest podcast record.
Love it. I want to be first. If you ain't first, you're last. Ricky Bobby said that.
Ricky Bobby said that.
Man, favorite podcast right now. I kind of cycle through. I've really gotten into the John Christ Net Positive podcast. So Christian comedian. It's very light. It's very topical. It's very funny, and they do a great job of just talking about things in the world, but doing it with some levity. And so my kids ride with me a lot, and so I want to listen to stuff that I'm okay with them listening to.
Sure.
And so that's a good one. It's funny, it's easy, it's conversational. So I've had that one locked and loaded for like the past 2 months.
Who do you learn from? And you can decide whether or not you want to choose someone in terms of professionally, football or other. Man,
professionally, I think the guy there's been a couple, but the guy who's probably had the biggest impact on me is a guy by the name of Adam Gaylor. He's the defensive coordinator at Jinx High School, which is in the Tulsa area. Very storied program over there, but Adam is, in my mind, the best defensive coach in America. And he has been more than generous with his time with me. And just, again, we've developed a friendship beyond coaching, but just sharing resources. He's a guy that, man, if we're playing somebody and I go, man, they're in this weird stuff and this formation's just giving us fits, and how are we going to, like, we bounce stuff off each other, share resources, share ideas, man. And he's done it at a high level for a long time. Has won multiple championships, and he is fantastic, and he's been fantastic to me.
All right, you said Rustique was your favorite restaurant, so you cannot use that for this.
Okay.
What is a go-to date night for you and Mrs. Gill? What's your? Is there a rhythm there? Is it something different every time? Is there a spot that you love?
Spot, not necessarily. I think when you live in a house of 3 boys, quiet is high up on the list. So if we're going out for a date night, like, it's probably going to be
very peaceful,
pretty low key.
Yeah.
So that's usually pretty high on the list. I am a carnivore by nature, so I'm gonna want to probably procure some large portion of meat that has been kissed by flames. So that's really high up on my list.
Yeah.
So if we can get somewhere that's just
a quiet
us two,
steakhouse,
quiet, a great steak, and then we're big dessert people, and so there's a lot of pregame planning that goes into scouting the dinner dessert menu.
Yeah.
And if that's not sufficient for us, then we branch out and do a deep dive scouting report on local establishments around that that provide a dessert option that we would prefer. Yeah.
Where in the U.S. have you not been, but you really want to go?
Ooh, 2 that are on my list. One is out to the southwest, like Arizona, like that type of area. I'd love to go hiking and just explore out there. That's on my list. And then the greater northeast area, like that whole Vermont, Connecticut. Like I've heard, haven't been. I'm usually busy in the fall, but I've heard it's beautiful. And so just being able to go see different regions of the country that I haven't been to before, those two are on my list.
All right, and last one. I figured this would be a special one since you're both Arkansas natives. What's your favorite thing about the state of Arkansas? Coach, you can answer this one too if you want.
I'll let you go first because I don't want to say the same things you said.
Well, Arkansas is unique, and I've lived in 3 of the 4 corners. You have to choose your corners wisely.
That's facts.
But Arkansas is full of great people, just like every other state. You get around people that are like-minded and love the Lord. It's awesome to live and do life anywhere. But what I love about Arkansas is the versatility in Northwest Arkansas. It's not too large that you kind of get ruined with traffic and things like that, although in Northwest Arkansas the traffic is a mess. But you've got outdoors, you've got rivers and lakes, you've got all kinds of things that you can do. The key component, though, is that there's not an NFL, there's not a professional team there. And so being a fan of the Razorback athletic department has its ups and downs, but
A lot of downs recently.
some downs, but it draws everybody together. There's unity in it because there
We're all
are
in this
not
together.
as many to cheer for, and so that's pretty special about the state.
Yeah, I would echo all those. I tell people all the time, the Razorback lifestyle chose me. I didn't choose it. I was born into it. That's just the way it goes. And so I think a lot of my childhood memory, I can remember sitting in my grandfather's lap watching the 1994 NCAA basketball championship. And we've had season tickets for football and basketball and baseball since I can remember. And going and seeing that team play in person. I was young, but being able to see them play and then watching them on national TV beat Duke, I'll never forget Scotty Thurman. Yeah. Just those core memories. A lot of them for me are surrounded with the Razorbacks, and that's how I spent time with my grandfather. That's how my brother and I spent a lot of time together and all that. And I think just the people. Coach said it, but I mean it's a great place to live. We were fortunate when we moved back from Kansas. In every spot that we lived in, man, we were just fortunate to be blessed by great friends. My family's there. We attended a couple of really great churches, so that's good. And then I would be remiss as the director of food operations to not mention Wright's Barbecue.
I knew you were going to bring this up. I knew we couldn't get through an hour and 10 minutes.
Shout out Jordan Wright.
You know he's going to listen, right?
He better.
Jordan going to listen?
I'm going to send
this?
it to him. He better.
Yeah,
but
he has to listen to the end.
As someone who I lived in Kansas City for 5 years.
Yeah.
Very passionate barbecue fan base. I've been to Texas multiple times and had Texas barbecue. I've been to the Carolinas and had Carolina barbecue. It is the best barbecue that you're going to get in the United States of America. And don't take my word for it. Take Yelp's word for it. Just rated the #1 barbecue restaurant in the country. In the country.
That's big.
That's a big time honor.
That's a big number.
And I've been fortunate. Jordan is a fantastic human being. Was a part of the Shiloh family. And it's been cool to watch a guy go from dabbling with something that he was interested in, a hobby, to selling some breakfast burritos at the farmer's market, to catering out of the back of a trailer. And now he's got 4 restaurants. He's blowing up. But I think that's what's cool is he's a great dude, and obviously the food's great. But just that area in general in Northwest Arkansas, man, there's so many connections there, between Walmart and J.B. Hunt and Tyson Foods, and man, I'm a product of that. I'm not famous by any means, but man, I made so many great connections in Northwest Arkansas that have made my life and the life of my family better. And that comes down to, man, it's really good people, like Coach said, who are typically, like-minded, and they love the state they're from. They share in the agony most Saturdays in the fall. But man, it's a good place, and it's got really good people.
Well, I do want to say this to Coach Gill. I'm proud of you, and I'm thankful for you. I'm proud of you just because of who you are in Christ and who you are to Kayla and your boys. I'm thankful for you for who you are to me, the friendship and just the sharpening. I know too that I'm not the only one doing the sharpening in this relationship. You do as well, and you do a great job. And then I'm extremely grateful for you because of what you bring to our football team and our program. It allows me to be a better head coach because if I didn't have you, I probably wouldn't be a very good head coach. If I didn't have our other coaches the same, I can't do it all. Wouldn't want to do it, and no one would allow me to do it all. So I just want everybody to know that I am all of those things and excited that you're here. And you've allowed me to experience things professionally that I wouldn't have been able to experience had you not been on my staff, and I appreciate that.
Well, likewise.
All right. Well, with that, we're going to wrap up our longest podcast ever at an hour and 15 minutes. Coach, thanks for coming on. We will be back next week. I'm not sure who we're going to go to next week. We got a couple ideas in the pipeline, but you'll have to stay tuned.
Ask for some suggestions from our fans.
Yeah, if anybody has
Do we
a
have
suggestion
fans?
on who they want to, not many.
Not many.
If anybody has a suggestion on who they want to hear, please feel free to reach out to us. We'll see you next time.